These are the biggest games, I think, on the radar for the month of November. Bama plays LSU next week. Huge game. Many people will call it a playoff elimination game. I'm like 9/10 of the way to calling it that, but you can never say for sure because you don't know what the rest of the country is going to do. You don't know how the rest of the field is going to pan out. But LSU, the last time we saw them, they were getting sliced up by any kind of quarterback run or option game in the second half against A&M, and that is something Alabama does very well. Now, this is not as cut and dry as that. If it were, college football would be easy to figure out and we'd all be rich betting it. But if LSU can't do any better stopping the run, especially the QB run, than they did against A&M, then that's ugly. Bama on the road was a disaster the last time we saw them in that kind of situation because it was at Neyland. How about Kalen DeBoer coming down to the SEC and gets a taste of Neyland at full throat? And I can very well assure you Death Valley at night will be that kind of experience and then some. In his first year at Alabama, he gets all that. And Kalen DeBoer versus Brian Kelly is an interesting little dynamic there as well. But for all the obvious reasons, this game's on the list. That's in week 11, so that's next week. The week after that, Tennessee goes to Georgia, and we got to find out, is this different than 2022? You remember a couple of years ago now, Tennessee gets the win over Alabama in Neyland just like they did a few weeks ago. Now, it was higher scoring because at the time, Heupel had the #1 offense in the country. And they were riding high, and they tore down the goalpost, and they dumped it in the river, and they did a lot of the same stuff that we saw a couple of weeks ago. But then we knew they had that game looming on the road in Athens, and they could not withstand Georgia. They physically were second place that day by a wide margin, and it let Tennessee know how far they still have to go. So we're 2 years later, and they're in the same boat, and I assume that they'll be a one-loss team when they go down there. And thing about Georgia is Georgia will be favored to still be a one-loss team, but this will be after Georgia's already played Florida this weekend, where they're a healthy favorite, and they will have already gone to Ole Miss, where they'll be a smaller favorite, but still a favorite. Is Georgia still a one-loss team? It's no guarantee. Would expect them to be, but there's no guarantee. And so this is like the Bama-LSU game. For all we know, we'll be talking about playoff elimination, although I'm not sure that's the case with Tennessee. And if Georgia's merely a one-loss team, that wouldn't be the case with Georgia. But, dude, this is all these big games Georgia's played. Bama, Texas, the Florida games in Jacksonville, Ole Miss. This is the one they get at home. This is the top 10, top 15 caliber team they get at home. So that one is 2 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now, and who knows where we are by this point, Indiana, thus far undefeated, goes to Ohio State, week 13. We've got to shake the idea of upset-proof teams. I'll tell you, I'm thinking this way with Georgia, Florida this weekend. I think this way with Ohio State, Indiana. Recent history has taught us you got a handful of teams any given year. Normally Georgia's one of them. Normally Bama under Saban was one of them. Normally Ohio State under Ryan Day has been one of them, where there is a certain small group, and they're all in it, that is just immune from these kinds of upsets in November. It will not happen. Now, they may not cover a spread because the spread's so big, but they're not losing the game. They're just too good. They're too fundamentally sound. They're too well coached. They're too deep. They will not let it happen. That may not be the case this year. And if it's not, and it has not been with Ohio State, if it's not, you cannot discount these games. And Indiana's playing the best ball that we've ever seen them play. You can't discount these games. For Ohio State, let's say they go beat Penn State this weekend. God forbid they lose it. If they lose it, this is its own segment. But even if they win this weekend, people will start to think they got over the hump. Now we'll have the Michigan game for fun and then the Big Ten title game. No, you won't. Not yet, not in that order. Look at the schedule. They got Indiana. Indiana's better than Michigan. You need to be focused on Indiana a whole lot more than you need to be focused on Michigan, although I understand why you would think opposite. Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana are still undefeated in conference play. So let's say Ohio State does lose to Penn State this weekend. Well, if Indiana keeps winning and Oregon keeps winning and we end up second to last weekend of the season, we could still be in that weird trajectory where we're on pace to have 3 undefeated Big Ten teams. That could also be in play. Not to mention the whole Ohio State college football playoff resume talk. The week after that is rivalry week. And that means, sure, you got Ohio State, Michigan, you got the Iron Bowl, you got Notre Dame, USC, we have all of these things. South Carolina, Clemson could be a really, really big sneaky game that day. Texas at Texas A&M in week 14. It could be game of the year material. The cheapest tickets there right now are off the charts. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I talked to you about some games of the year. Colin, don't show it to me yet, but in a second, I'm going to show you lines on these games of the year. But I'm going to give you a little sneak preview. This line has dropped significantly. Dare I say precipitously. It's dropped because ever since we talked about it, that thing is shrunk. It is sunk like a stone almost to net zero. Not quite, but almost. It's a one-night only type of game. What I mean by that is, sure, Texas is in playoff contention. A&M is as well. They're both in SEC championship game contention. But you know what? If you bring your Meemaw to the TV that night, she doesn't need to know any of that. You turn this game on for her, her jaw will be on the ground for one night only spectacle type reasons. Because Kyle Field will be maybe in a form like most of you have never seen it before. Kyle Field has been waiting for this moment. It is basically the lyrics of In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins laid over a football game. I don't know what more I can say, but I will say this. These teams have challenges before they play that game. Texas has a bye week this week. They play Florida. They go to Arkansas, which was a total nightmare for them last time they went up there, and they got Kentucky. So they got a couple of losable games there. A&M goes to South Carolina this Saturday. It's a very losable game. They got New Mexico State. Ask Auburn about that. And then they go to Auburn before they play Texas. So a couple of tough road spots for Texas A&M. So there's still a long way to go. Like, they got to pull out the weed whacker and get their way through this unscathed to make it maximize its national significance. It doesn't need significance. Like, all due respect to the folks in Billings, Montana, the locals there do not care if you're watching or not. They will hate each other all the same. And same weekend, rivalry weekend, Kansas State goes to Iowa State. This could have all kinds of different ramifications. This was a game played in like half a foot of snow last year. It was unbelievable. This was Iowa State's coming out moment. I think towards the end of the year, Rocco Becht had a really good game. And again, they're playing in a snow globe. And they go in there, and Iowa State had not had a great season, but I thought it was the moment. It was like the Papa Top on 2024 for them. I still think of that game as the first game of 2024 for them. And so this year, they play it in Ames. Who knows what the weather's going to be. Kansas State, they still control their future right now. Iowa State's undefeated. They control their future right now. So there could be so much on the line. Two of the best coaches, I think, in that conference in Kleiman and Matt Campbell, and I'm really looking forward to that one. I could have talked about Clemson, Virginia Tech. I could have talked about Georgia, Ole Miss. But I want you to think about this, okay? So these games of the year, including the ones that I just mentioned, I hit up FanDuel, as we can do, when you got a partner like FanDuel. I hit up FanDuel and I said, these are the biggest games I think are going to happen in November. Give me some numbers. And so FanDuel, boom, hit us right back. So games of the year for November right now, these numbers exist at FanDuel. Alabama at LSU, what do you think the number is? Alabama's favored. As of this moment, you can bet this number. Bama minus 2.5 at LSU. Tennessee goes to Georgia. A couple of weeks from now, Georgia laying 10.5 against Tennessee as of now. Indiana at Ohio State, that number's all the way down to Buckeyes minus 12.5. This one, though, the Texas versus Texas A&M number, has gone from Texas minus double digits just a few weeks ago to Texas minus 4.5. So I kind of flippantly advised you to take some Texas A&M at plus 10, plus 11 a few weeks ago. Apparently the whole world did, because it's down to Texas minus 4.5 now. And exclusive news here, breaking news, because this game isn't available to be wagered on yet. But according to FanDuel, listen up in the Big 12, if they put the Kansas State at Iowa State number out right now, it would be Cyclones minus 5.5 at home. Games of the year. There you go. Don't say you weren't warned.